chorus consists mostly of the repetition of the lines, "Annie, are you okay?" It's important to understand where MJ got the idea for this line before we extrapolate beyond the intended context. And context comes from the Latin com and texture, meaning to weave together. So it refers to weaving something into the texture or the fabric of another thing, just like synchronicity is woven into the fabric of space-time, aka maritime. Point being, context refers to the dual meaning of a statement, the physical meaning and the esoteric spiritual meaning. To focus on one and not the other will deceive you, which puts the con in context. MJ got the idea of Annie from a medical training mannequin used for teaching cardiopulmonary resuscitation, or CPR for short. The mannequin is known as Resusci Anne, the idea being that you perform mouth-to-mouth resuscitation and frequently ask, "Are you okay?" Hence the phrase, "Annie, are you okay?" Now there's a very specific reason for MJ using this mannequin on a symbolic level. What do mannequins represent? The unilluminated or bestial man. If you cast your mind back to the "Can You Feel It" video, you'll remember that Michael has used the mannequin in this exact same symbolic way in the past. The mannequin is what the Bible calls dry bones, the fourth of Ezekiel's 7 visions, where God breathes new life into dry bones. God's breath being the holy wind, or the Holy Spirit. In other words, Ruah. So it's about the Holy Spirit coming into the heart chakra and resurrecting man by uniting his physical nature with the spiritual. It's the fourth vision of 7, meaning it is a metaphor about the heart chakra. The mannequin and the dry bones are synonymous. Annie is, as we have previously discerned, the Holy Spirit, aka God's breath or the holy wind. This is why you have to perform mouth to mouth on her, or at least that's why Michael used her metaphorically in this way. Annie is of course synonymous with Anakin Skywalker, meaning when the Holy Spirit or God's breath enters the dry bones, he puts the Anakin in the mannequin. There can be no doubt at this stage, Annie is the Holy Spirit, aka Christ consciousness, the true and rightful captain of the vessel. Captain EO. The Antichrist is the unholy spirit, and can only enter and become the captain of an empty vessel, meaning a vessel that the Holy Spirit has left because the ego rejected it. One who knowingly or unknowingly invites evil in can be said to symbolically murder the Holy Spirit within them. Now of course you can't really murder the Holy Spirit, and neither can the Antichrist consciousness. It just means that the Holy Spirit leaves the temple or the vessel. When the vessel is empty, the Antichrist consciousness has access and can, if you allow it, occupy your heart chakra, which is possession. Why do you think they call the music channel MTV? It means empty empty vessel. It's no coincidence that the demon in The Exorcist first introduced itself to Reagan as Captain Howdy. Reagan acts as the vessel, and Reagan means royal, by the way. But Reagan acts as the vessel for the captain, aka the little horn. So the last thing you want to be is an empty vessel. Empty vessels need captains, and if you let the wrong one in, you're screwed. And I'd be careful if I were you, because sometimes the wrong one poses as the right one. And quite frankly, a vampire is never the right one, contrary to what this movie poster for that film may try to subconsciously tell you. So, Annie, are you okay? Refers to the Holy Spirit resurrecting the dry bones. But if that wasn't enough, there's more. I talked in my Appledore series about George Bush in the classroom with the children reading The Pet Goat during 9/11. I showed how, despite the fact that the children were made to chant "kite, kit, still, playing, must," they still sound phonetically similar to what is an obvious magical incantation of kite, because kites fly, hit, still, plane, must. Point being, when communicating to somebody on a subconscious level, all that matters is the sound that the subconscious mind perceives. An adept neuro-linguistic programming expert knows this. NLP as a science is simply a mimicry of how this creative force in the universe operates through us. Both Christ and Antichrist spirits utilise this type of communication. It is a purely spiritual phenomenon, and I'm going to suggest that that is exactly what is happening with the line, Annie, are you okay? Annie, are you okay is the human level interpretation. The non-human level or spiritual communication is an Enochian invocation. Enochian is the alleged language of the angels. John Dee was a Welsh mathematician, astronomer, astrologer, occultist, navigator, imperialist, and consultant to Queen Elizabeth I. He devoted much of his life to the study of alchemy, divination, and Hermetic philosophy. It was Dee who, along with fellow occultist Edward Kelly, communicated with what they claim were angels and received the Enochian language. Now, of course, technically it's a human interpretation of the pre-Adamic language, so I doubt it's a perfect translation of the language in its pure form, as who is to say that the human tongue is even capable of pronouncing such a language. However, it's likely to be a version of the language tailor-made for human use, in much the same way that a four-dimensional shape cannot be seen in a three-dimensional world, but you could perhaps at the very least view its three-dimensional shadow, just as a three-dimensional object casts a two-dimensional shadow. Anyway, I'll get right to the point. Annie, are you okay? Is phonetically similar to a certain Enochian translation. It's not the name Annie I refer to, but specifically, are you okay? Annie, I feel, remains in the same context, as it is a name. That being said, the Enochian word for God, referred to as the Lord, is Eni. Despite the way the word looks, it is pronounced Eni. Eni is referred to as the Lord in the 12th Enochian call, and is equated with wrath. It says, quote, "The Lord may be magnified whose name amongst you is wrath," unquote. Biblically speaking, the Lord's wrath refers to the period after the 7 seals are opened, and God's wrath comes upon the wicked. 7 trumpets are blown, and the locusts are unleashed from the bottomless pit, and commanded by their king Abaddon to torment any man who does not have the seal of God on their forehead, aka the third eye. So the wind eye. The seal of God, I would imagine, refers to those who are filled with the Holy Spirit, whereas the mark of the beast would no doubt mean those who are filled by the unholy Spirit. Nonetheless, the Lord's wrath refers to this time in general. Given the nature of the smooth criminal lyrics, any being directly linked with the 7 seals is just too much to ignore. Moreover, the day of the Lord is referenced in the Old Testament by Amos, where the Lord is a divine warrior set to conquer his enemies. Any is therefore God in battle mode. Since in the song the Holy Spirit is attacked, perhaps this is a necessity. Anyway, the phrase in Enochian that I wish to shine a light on is this. It is pronounced Iuelki. It means bringeth out. So, to cut to the chase, if we combine any with Iuelki, we get any Iuelki, which I'm proposing is the higher spiritual intent behind Annie, are you okay? If you listen to the way Michael pronounces it, it sounds something like Annie, are you okay? While not exactly the same, it is almost identical. Let's keep in mind the fact that no one can be 100% sure on the exact pronunciation of what is essentially a non-human, higher-dimensional language, and for all we know, Iuoke may be closer to how it's supposed to sound. Either way, both pronunciations are roughly the same on the grander scale. So we have an Enochian incantation that translates as bringeth out Annie, or bringeth out any, the Lord. Either way, God is being invoked through the medium of the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit is synonymous on a symbolic level with the moon. If you cast your mind back, the moon has been struck and is a crescendo, meaning it is enveloped in darkness. This is an invocation to bring the moon out of the darkness and back into the temple, where it rightfully belongs, casting its borrowed light down through the crown chakra and into the heart chakra. What this means is that in both verses 1 and 2 of the song, the problem is highlighted. That being that the Holy Spirit has left the temple and the Antichrist consciousness, or the unholy spirit, has entered the temple. While in the chorus, the solution is presented, that being the return of the Holy Spirit to the temple. This is true of both the physical and the metaphysical levels of the chorus. The physical level context refers to the return of Annie into the temple, and the metaphysical context is a direct Enochian invocation of Annie into the temple. This almost concludes the lyrical portion of Smooth Criminal, but there is one more thing. Towards the end of the song, the line "Dadgonit" is repeated. Dadgonit is a variation of the phrase "Doggonit," which in and of itself is a more polite way of saying "God damn it." If we dissect the phrase "Doggonit," it seems to imply that a dog has gone. Dog is God reversed, hence the phrase dogma. But the dog, in symbolic terms, refers to Sirius, the dog star. The theme of the missing dog is not exclusive to the lyrics. At the beginning of Moonwalker, or at least the Smooth Criminal short film part of Moonwalker, MJ and his friends are playing with a dog named Skipper. Skipper then runs off and disappears into the lair of Mr. Big, which is how Michael accidentally stumbles across the lair in the first place. So Skipper the dog is missing. The dog is gone. Hence the phrase "Doggonit." Symbolically, the dog star represents the foremost guiding force in the building of the Rainbow Bridge or Tower, which you can see here on the Moonwalker front cover. The Rainbow Bridge is of course the bridge between the spiritual and the physical, once all these chakras are active. The guiding force refers to the force guiding the temple from the higher spiritual realm. In other words, the Holy Spirit. Like all symbols, the dog star is neutral and can be utilised by Christ or Antichrist spirits, meaning it can be symbolised as both the holy and the unholy spirit, which depends wholly on which side is using it and to what ends. In this case, the loss of the dog star would represent the loss of the Holy Spirit. This is confirmed by the name of the dog, Skipper. The word skipper literally means the captain of a ship or a boat. The Holy Spirit is exactly that. It is the true and rightful captain of the vessel. So if the captain is gone, the vessel is empty, and an empty vessel is open to be hijacked, just as a ship at sea is open to be hijacked by pirates. And pirates are exactly what Skull and Bones are, a bunch of pirates, aka demons, occupying the empty vessels, which is to say the dry bones of the royal, aka Regan, bloodlines, which is nothing but a bunch of skullduggery. This concludes the Smooth Criminal lyrics, so now onto the video.